Alright, in this video we'll be talking about multiplying fractions, but the first thing we'll see isn't really multiplying two fractions. We'll start by multiplying a fraction by a whole number, like 2/7 times 3. Now, what do we mean by 2 over 7 again? I think it means that we grab a block, we cut it into 7 bits, and we take 2 of those bits. Okay. Then what do we mean by times 3? Well, it means we take one copy of that, we take a second copy, and then we take a third copy, and we see what we've got. So if you look at that carefully and you lump all of it together, you should see you've got 6 bits out of 7 still. So you get 6 out of 7. Now, if you wanted to do that without drawing, I hope you can see that, well, what happened there was 2 got multiplied by 3. Because you were taking 2 of those pieces, and so if you want to take 3 copies of that, or 2 times 3 is 6. But once again, we did not change the size of those pieces. We didn't cut it into any more or less pieces, it's still cut into 7 bits, and so it should still be over 7. There's no reason that one should change. So don't multiply the 7 by 3 as well, it wouldn't make sense to, would it? So only multiply that top number by the 3 then. Okay, so what happens when we have 2 fractions? Well, before we do that, I think we need to think maybe a little more carefully about what it means to multiply, because it's not as easy as taking some number of copies of something else if they're both fractions. So when we want to think about multiplication in a more careful way, one way to do that is to think of it as an area of a rectangle. So if you take 3 times 2, all right, that might be the same as getting a rectangle, which is, say, 3 meters long and 2 meters wide. And you should have seen this in primary school, where if you have the blocks there, you can just think of it as counting up those blocks. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those, right? And because of that, well, you can see the area is going to be 6 then, right? Now, of course, you knew 3 times 2 is 6, but visualizing it this way gives us a way to think about what multiplication's doing. Okay, so that now if we only take just one of those blocks and we zoom in on that, we can now start thinking about the fraction ones. Okay, so let's say we take 2/3 times 4 out of 5. We'll tackle the 2/3 first. What does that mean? It means in one dimension we want to chop it up into 3 slices, and along the top there we will say take 2 out of those 3 slices. What does 4 out of 5 mean? Well, it means we can chop the other dimension into 5 slices, and now we take 4 out of those 5. Okay? So how many bits do we have altogether in this block? How many bits have we got? Count down. You've got like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 bits. Right, so you've got 15 bits in total. Now, some of you might be like, you just go 3 times 5. Yes, you can. So you've got 15 bits there. And how many bits do you have altogether if you take the area swept out by the 2/3 times 4 out of 5? I think you'd have these ones there. So once again, you pile them all together and see how much have you got. Well, I think if you count that up, you'll see you've got 8 bits. And again, that is 8 out of the 15 in total. Okay. So once again, how would you get that without drawing a whole picture every time? Well, maybe you can see that the top number, the 8, is pretty much just 2 times 4. And the 15 is just 3 times 5. So this time you had to multiply both top and bottom, and that's because the over 3 cut us into 3 bits, and over 5 cut each of those into 5 bits. So there were 15 bits in total. That was 3 times 5. So you can see why the top numbers should multiply and the bottom numbers should multiply as well. And that makes multiplying fractions really, really easy. And I hope you expected it to be easier than adding, because multiplying and fractions or division are pretty much the same thing, just opposites, right? But multiplying and adding are very different. So that's why adding was a bit annoying, but multiplying is really easy, right? Pretty much all you do when you multiply fractions is that you just need to multiply the top numbers and multiply the bottom numbers. Okay, so let's see another one. If we have, say, 2 over 5 times 8 out of 9, what do we do? Well, the top numbers are 2 and 8, so they multiply to 16. Bottom numbers 5 and 9, multiply to 45. Okay, so it's easy as just doing that. Use multiply top, multiply bottom, and you're done. Okay, but I hope you see why as well. One little consequence of that is that if possible, if you can find a way to simplify before you do it, it makes things easier, like this one, right? If you can see that the 9 and the 12 can simplify by dividing by 3, so the 12 becomes 4, the 9 becomes 3, then that makes it easier, because now 5 times 3 is just 15, and 4 times 11 is just 44. Now that makes things a bit easier, right? But if you don't spot it, it just means that you might need to simplify your answer at the end, but it just makes things a bit easier because numbers are smaller and it keeps the times tables a bit more contained. So if you can simplify beforehand, that makes things easier as well. So see if you can spot common factors from top and bottom even before you do it, if possible. Okay, if you don't do it though, it's okay. It just means you simplify at the end. Okay, so that's multiplying fractions. Thanks for watching. See you next time.